We're in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I am the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I am very excited to welcome our next guest onto the interview series, Sandy Cross. She is the Chief People Officer at PGA of America. Sandy, thank you so much for being here. If you want to share a little about yourself for our listeners, including your pronouns, and when you were younger, do you remember how exactly you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Absolutely, Christine. It's a pleasure to be here. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And when I answered the question growing up about what I wanted to be, there were two things. Early on, I wanted to be a dancer, professional dancer. I spent many years in tap, jazz, ballet, all of the genres, and grew into some instruction as well in my early teen years. So I wanted to do that. And then I evolved dramatically to a pre-law track and pursuit of becoming a lawyer. So that's how I answered that question earlier on.
I love that. I always think it's interesting to see kind of what we thought we'd be when we were younger as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I've had a really fun and blessed journey at the PGA of America. It's interesting because I don't come from a golf background. I didn't grow up exposed to the game. So the fact that I've had a tremendous career in the business of golf has really been incredibly special and incredibly rewarding. And I've gotten to work on a lot of different areas of the business at the PGA of America. So I look forward to sharing some of those insights as we continue with our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get into it. It's in the title of the interview series, and I'm sure something that you're thinking about every day, company culture. How do you think about really measuring this moving, dynamic word or phrase in both a qualitative and quantitative way at the PGA of America?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because it's critical to do the qualitative and the quantitative. We do a wide variety of surveying with our people, really small bite-sized pulse surveys on a regular basis, all the way across the continuum, or runs the gamut to very in-depth engagement surveys where we'll bring in a third party to help us do those. And a couple things that are really important. We make sure that our survey mechanisms, some of them are anonymous, some are not anonymous, and we're always very upfront with our people about what they're entering into. And with every single pulse survey that we do, the last question is always, is there anything else you'd like to share? Those exact words every time. So the upfront questions, we're getting the quantitative results, measuring everything from literally how are you feeling to maybe asking them about a specific benefit program. But I find in that last question, is there anything else you'd like to share, is where we get the meaty qualitative input and feedback on anything. We don't bookend it. We don't say, is there anything else you'd like to share about X? We leave it fully open-ended. And because we've built trust with these regular surveys, and we always share the responses shortly thereafter the survey, the aggregate responses, that has driven the trust and engagement. And we see that people are comfortable opening up in that last question with the qualitative insights. And we've really shifted from, gone are the days, I'll say, where the people team, which is our name for our HR function, where the people team would cook up a benefits program and just roll it out and hope that people like it. Now, when we're considering a category, we ask our people, hey, we're thinking about XYZ. What do you think? And sometimes going as far as saying to our people, here are 3 choices. You pick what you'd like us to do. Instead of, again, like, hey, we developed this thing, hope you love it, and then maybe you don't, and we wonder why. So again, qualitative and quantitative are critical.
Absolutely. I think those are really good examples. You need to ask on a really consistent basis in different ways how people are feeling at different times throughout the employee experience. And I think that you're right. We've seen a shift in the elevation of the employee voice, really asking before doing as well, and really creating that feedback. And I think we've heard across the board that over these past few years, for a variety of reasons, people are very stressed, and they're sharing kind of these new expectations around employers. One study found that 47% of employees reported their stress was higher than anything they've experienced previously in their career, and only 37% agreed that their organization really understood what they needed both in their personal lives and also with their families. How does the PGA of America support the full lives of employees?
Well, we very much take a whole person approach, and that's a shift that we've made over the last 18 to 24 months, moving beyond thinking only about the mental well-being, the mental health piece. Now, we've done that. We've engaged a new provider probably just over a year ago called Tava Health, and that's been a real productive shift for us from a traditional, what I would say, kind of off-the-shelf EAP or employee assistance program. We've moved to the more robust Tava Health platform. And the reason was it allows our people to engage on their terms, whether that's the phone or through text or through video conference, their terms when they want their way. So that's been really productive. But back to your question about whole person, which is the approach that we take, we think also about the physical benefits. And one of the areas where we've just really leaned on our people to tell us exactly what they wanted is in the health and fitness space. Now that we have a distributed workforce all over the country, we want to make sure that everyone has access to health and fitness benefits. Previously, when we were all largely centrally located, we were able to have a relationship with the health and fitness club down the street. That no longer works because people are in many different locations. So we were going about looking at maybe a national health and fitness chain. But when we surveyed our people and we got those deep insights, they said to us, you know what, we would actually prefer an annual health and fitness stipend where we can deploy those funds in the way that we see fit. And there's an approved list of items, but it's a very robust list because health and fitness, as you well know, comes to life in a lot of different ways for people. It could be anything from healthy meal kit service to the traditional gym membership. So we think about that. We also think about, I would put it in an interpersonal bucket or a personal bucket. We surveyed our people. We did a caregiving survey. We had never done that before, and it was incredibly insightful. We got high levels of engagement, and we learned things we didn't know about our employees as caregivers. Elder care, child care, and also pet care bubbled up. Our people really care about their pets. So now that we have those insights, we've gone about identifying a provider who we're about to roll out in 30 days that's going to be a robust caregiving platform for our people. They're each going to have a care coach to help them navigate those very stressful caregiving moments in their lives. Everyone at some point in their life will be a caregiver. And to be able to have this resource for our people is really meaningful. Another bucket that we're vetting right now for total well-being for our people is the financial bucket. We think about helping our people with financial literacy. Everyone's at different ages and stages, have different financial concerns. So how can we provide education and resources? Maybe it's app-based that'll help our people become more educated, more aware, and more savvy with their financial management and whatever matters most to them from a planning perspective. We also look at purpose. Our employees are deeply passionate about our mission, and they're deeply committed to what we do. And we want to make sure that there is recognition, peer-to-peer recognition opportunities where individuals who are living our mission and purpose are giving shout outs to one another. And that could be as simple as doing something on our Slack channels, our company messaging channels, where people are recognizing one another for living our values, mission, and purpose. And then one other component I would add to the whole person bucket would be around belonging. We launched a program called PGA Cares, which is our employee volunteerism program. So for the first time ever, each of our employees gets 16 volunteer time off hours on an annual basis to go engage as a volunteer at the local charity or nonprofit of their choice in the communities where we work, live, and play. And as you likely know, the research shows that when you're engaged in volunteerism, you're getting back as much, if not more, than what you're giving in terms of an investment in yourself and feeling good about yourself because of what you have given. And also, I think, our employees become more appreciative and more grateful for how blessed we are when we go to some of these volunteerism settings and we see individuals who are less fortunate. So those are some examples of the whole person approach that we take.
Yeah, it sounds like those are really good examples of meeting people where they are, resourcing folks, making sure that benefits are available, and again, collecting that feedback as well. And we know that in terms of making the workplace experience better for caretakers, for working parents, it really benefits everyone as well. When you feel engaged in the work you're doing, it's purpose driven. I want to touch on the belonging piece that you mentioned as well in terms of how you define the pillars of the PGA of America's diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy as well.
Oh, I'd be happy to share that. So we've been deeply immersed in the DEI space since 2014. We have 5 areas of focus. One is around education and skill development, and that is a pillar that I believe we will have forever. There is always something to learn about the DEI space. It's an ever-changing space. And it's important that we make sure that our people, as well as our PGA members across the country, deeply understand what diversity, equity, and inclusion are, how those are uniquely different from each other, what the business case is for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then most importantly, how do you operationalize it at your business? Whether it's here at the home office or it's in the field at a local golf facility, which is the point of play for consumers. So education and skill development is our primary focus. It's critically important. Second, we have governance. We're a professional trade association and we have a governance model, chapters, section, national level. And we're working really hard to make sure that the experience for our members is an equitable one. Regardless of the background, identity, or ability that you come from, we want to make sure that all of our PGA members and our employees have an equitable experience. We're also deeply focused on workforce diversification, not only at our corporate offices and in the field, but the golf industry represents 2 million jobs in golf. And we need to make sure that the golf industry workforce reflects the demographics of America, because that's the only way that we are going to attract America's diverse consumer base to participate in the game of golf. We've got to evolve the composition of that workforce. Similarly, we're very focused on supplier inclusion, and golf is an $84 billion a year industry in this country on an annual basis. And we think about what are the opportunities for minority-owned, women-owned, LGBT, disabled, veteran-owned businesses to engage in the economics of golf in that supply chain. And we know when they start to participate and benefit from the economics of golf, their interest in potentially playing the sport will likely blossom. And again, that goes back to our mission of growing participation in the sport. And then the 5th area, certainly not last or least, but is community engagement. We want to make sure that individuals who are either financially under-resourced and or underrepresented in the game and business of golf, that there are no real or perceived barriers for them to enter into the sport. And that could be something as simple as, but as meaningful as, a scholarship to participate in our PGA Junior League program. That's for boys and girls, all ages and skill levels. They play on teams together. It's basically golf's version of Little League, but we want to scholarship kids into that who are, again, are financially under-resourced. Just one example. So those are our 5 areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, a holistic strategy, really a multi-pronged approach to thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, your role in the community, also internally with employees and team members as well. I want to kind of bring it to a specific example too for folks who are listening. We know that so many folks have been looking at making their systems better, auditing the employee experience. The whole phrase of this is how we've always done things or business as usual was pretty much out the window. Can you tell me about how you and your team have redesigned a system to be more equitable over the past 2 years, whether it's a process, policy, or initiative?
One example that comes to mind, just because I'm sitting in our new beautiful home office in Frisco, Texas, is how we've designed this home office. It's not a policy or program. I guess I would call it an initiative, bringing to life the new home office of the PGA of America. We were incredibly thoughtful about how we designed the space and with an eye toward equity. And we wanted to make sure that the space was truly collaborative, open to all, accessible to all. A lot of companies have done this, but there's not the kind of executive wing with offices tucked away. And we just, again, it's just open and the spaces are accessible to everyone, utilizable, is that a word? Can be utilized by everyone. So we really had an equitable eye toward designing the space and bringing the space to life. We worked closely with a company called Page, again, who was incredibly thoughtful about the approach and the design and the access and the treatment, making sure that the PGA of America story, the story of our PGA members comes to life in the building, that our shared values are on full display, subtle reminders to our people of how to live those shared values on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've been hearing a lot of folks be really intentional around their office space, their collaboration space to make sure that it is accessible and that folks feel like they can do their best work there as well. I think another thing that folks are being really intentional about too is language, which I think is something that you're passionate about as well after reading your bio too. And you've led a couple of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives such as the language of inclusion. Can you tell us about the goals of this program and a little bit of context there?
Yes, I'm smiling. I'm so glad that you brought that up. That's a fun topic for me. It is, again, the language of inclusion, as you said. Language, as the listeners may well know, is verbal, but visual as well. So anything that we're doing, again, even if it's in the home office, we're trying to be incredibly thoughtful about every word choice, every imagery choice. Things are conveyed. And the initiative around the language of inclusion was driven by the fact that the sport of golf is steeped in history and tradition. And there are so many things that make the game truly special and unique. But there are also some things baked into the fabric of golf culturally that inadvertently, I don't think intentionally, but inadvertently are off-putting to the very consumers that we are trying to attract into the sport. So we went about conducting a language audit, verbal language, visual language across the industry and across our association to identify what are those word choices that, again, could be inadvertently off-putting. For golfers who are out there, or maybe non-golfers too, I'll use one example. On the golf course, there are tees. There's a variety of tees where you tee off from on the hole. And oftentimes the forwardmost set of tees, the shortest length, are referred to as the women's tees, which, while not ill-intentioned, it's off-putting to individuals, to women, because it assumes that, women's skill level is less than the men's. They need to be forward. They need to be playing a shorter yardage. Not necessarily. So let's call those something else. Let's call those the forward tees. They might be suitable for men. Like tee placement, tee selection should be based solely on someone's playing ability, not based on their gender, not based on their age, not based on how they identify. Could be anything, the cart girl or, the men's grill. There's just a lot of words out there. And also we found when we did a Google search for imagery in golf, the images that were returned were very traditional. A lot of white male imagery was out there on the internet. So we worked with one of our partners called Jopwell, J-O-P as in Peter, W-E-L-L, to create the Jopwell PGA collection of images. And we went to Santa Ana Golf Club in New Mexico, where there were individuals, Black, Native American, and Hispanic, playing the game and working at the golf club. And we were able to assemble an authentic collection of inclusive imagery. And that's now out there. If you Google Jopwell PGA collection, you will find the results of that photo shoot that we did, because we want people to be able to showcase inclusive imagery when they're putting together golf pieces, promotional pieces, communication pieces, et cetera. So those are just a couple snippets of the language audit that we did. And again, ongoing education is critical.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate those examples, and also how it's there's a visual piece as well. Representation is so important, especially in the game as well, and getting folks into the fold too. It sounds like this is something that you are, again, really passionate about, and I want to ask your perspective from when Sandy's not in the room or when another leader is not in the room. How do you kind of hold leaders, especially managers, accountable and drive an ownership mentality consistently to practice inclusion across the organization?
Well, there's a couple things that we've done, and this is definitely a growth area for us. So very recently, the golf industry, and we were a leader in this, we conducted a workplace inclusion survey to understand across many golf industry employers, how inclusive is the workplace? Because that's critical for us as an industry to attract talent. And one of the categories was around accountability. And we came up a little bit short. So we're very, very focused on accountability right now. But two things come to mind. One are our shared values. Let's see, in March of 2020, we rolled out shared values for our employees. And it was the first time ever in our 100 plus year history that we had shared values for our team. And these shared values they really represent a playbook, if you will, of how our employees show up every day and interact with each other. But in terms of accountability, those shared values have become embedded across the employee experience. From the time that we're looking for talent and acquiring talent and onboarding and developing, all the way through to offboarding talent, everything that we do, we're trying to look at it through the lens of our shared values. So very specifically, when we do our performance management with all of our team members, it is equally weighted 50% on what they do and 50% on how they do it. And the how is very specifically through the lens of our shared values. And we have 4 shared values, but each of those 4 has 5 supporting, visible, observable behaviors. So it's not like we just have 4 words on the wall and they're open to interpretation. Each of the values have each other's backs, get better every day, practice gratitude, start with clarity. Each of those 4 value statements has supporting observable behaviors. Everyone is weighted 50% on how that comes to life. So that's been really, really meaningful for us. One other thing that we've just added from an accountability standpoint, specific to diversity, equity, and inclusion, we've added into our annual goals for every employee. They have to work with their leader to develop an inclusive leadership goal. We believe every single team member at the PGA of America can lead inclusively, regardless of where they, quote unquote, sit in the organization. Everyone is a leader, everyone can lead. So I'm really excited about that being added to everyone's annual goals, an inclusive leadership goal.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a lot of changes from a structural and systemic lens. I want to talk about the industry of people, human resources, historically as well. Some organizations say they have this open door policy, but we know that people get historically a little bit hesitant if HR or people teams join a meeting, and some of that is historical and some of that is through personal experience. And you mentioned a couple of the ways that you currently do this, but really want to underscore, how do you build trust within your organization and encourage people to surface positive feedback and also issues to HR people and yourself?
That's an incredibly important area. It's really challenging. We try to take an always on listening approach. And as you mentioned, I touched on some of the mechanisms earlier, some of the survey mechanisms, of course, the open door, as you mentioned, but the many and varied types of surveys that we have, anonymous versus non-anonymous. One additional example would be, we have something called the Ask Seth inbox. Seth Waugh is our CEO, And there is a digital inbox where any employee can put a question anonymously. And we get a lot of questions, and we make sure to answer all those questions. Even if the answer might not be what the employee was hoping for, making sure that there's a mechanism for them to ask their question, because they might have fear, they might have trepidation, and they don't, to your point, want to go to HR or to their supervisor. So I think what I'm trying to get at is it's a little bit analogous to how people have different learning styles. There's different styles for people speaking up, and we want to have as many mechanisms or pathways or vehicles available as possible for someone to be able to be heard. Like, the last thing we want is a team member who's out there who doesn't feel heard. They don't know where to turn to. They don't have someone to trust. So a variety, I think, is a critical piece of that recipe. Give people as many options and pathways as possible to speak up. But with that being said, when it comes to our shared values, which I touched on, we encourage our people to first have the courageous conversation. If you think a teammate is coming up short a little bit relative to one of our shared values, approach them about it. Try to have that courageous conversation. Use our shared values as the point of entry to the conversation, or, a crutch, so to speak, to start that difficult conversation. So we've challenged our people to try to hold each other accountable, hold ourselves accountable, and minimize the things that could get escalated up the ladder to a supervisor, to HR, to our CEO. We try to minimize that as possible and encourage those conversations.
Absolutely. Coming back to those shared values is really important, and offering those vehicles up to folks in whatever form that they feel comfortable with. I think that goes back to our earlier conversation as well, for meeting folks where they are within the company, no matter kind of how it came to you in terms of employee feedback. Can you share an example of how employee feedback has really directly impacted a change or a new program or something at the PGA of America?
Yes, I'd be happy to. I shared a couple of them. The two most recent compelling that come to mind are the rollout of the caregiver platform. What we learned in that caregiver survey was incredibly insightful. Same with our health and wellness survey, super insightful. And also just generally, we'll ask questions about how are you feeling? And it's answered by, 105 emojis. And that's really telling. We can gauge that or do a barometer over that of what's going on in the company, what's going on in society, what might be going on in personal lives. And something I'm excited about is those metrics that we're measuring are now reported in our boardroom on a quarterly basis. Our board is interested in how our people are doing, how are they feeling. A key barometer also is around PTO. We did a PTO survey twice over the last year, incredible insights. And to find that more than 50% of our people right now aren't using all of their personal time off was very concerning. So now we're digging into what are the ways and the things we need to do that will allow our employees or help our employees engage more deeply with their personal time off. It's their time off. We want them to use it. We need them to use it. So we're looking at some unique solutions that are out there on the marketplace now for creative PTO programs. Just one other example.
Yeah, I think throughout our conversation, Sandy, you provided a lot of great examples to kind of how you're intentionally thinking about the employee experience, company culture, and design of the organization. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you want to share with folks who are listening, or underscore any key insights that you hope people bring with them?
Something I didn't touch on specifically, but I'd like to underscore it, is really the power and the necessity of communication. It's the one thing that the people team and the DEI team at the PGA of America, we've been talking about regularly. Like, as much as we think we communicate and as much as we think we share with our people, it's never enough. Like, you have to over communicate, because not everyone reads everything or receives everything in the same way. So the more you can communicate, use different mediums, regularly be out there reminding people of what's available, reminding people that we're here to listen and support. I think that's critically important, because when we don't do that, or we get a little bit lax in doing that, we find that people become less engaged, or they misunderstand things. Or if you don't give them the correct narrative, they create their own narrative, which often is an incorrect one. So that communication piece is so critical, and it's time intensive. You've got to be thinking about it every day. What can we tell our people that we think they know, but maybe they don't know? So that's just been top of mind for myself and the team lately, just to make sure we're out there and really, really communicating anything and everything.
Yeah, effective communication is so important. And it makes me think of the Brene Brown. I think she says the story that I'm telling myself versus the story that's actually happening, and making sure there's alignment there, and just like over communicating as opposed to under communicating as well. Not that there are two options, but it's something that needs to be practiced all the time. Sandy, thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture this afternoon.
My pleasure, Christine. I enjoyed it.
And as a reminder for folks who are listening, at AllVoices, we really believe in employees and employers being seen, heard, and understood, and know it's a requirement for the business to really succeed overall. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.